Climate change, the defining issue of our time, and Southeast Asia is one of the most vulnerable to its impacts. Indeed, there is an urgent need to help people navigate the complexity of climate change. And what better way to do that than storytelling? Join us as we break down how to tell stories that don't only inform but also move people to action. This is Through the Climate Lens, a conference on climate storytelling in Southeast Asia. We are excited to present to you Climate Tracker's very own energy reporting guide for Southeast Asia, a toolkit for journalists to cover the complex and interrelated topics of energy and climate change. This is the result of a collaboration of 8 journalists from Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines to help journalists who would like to report on energy under the climate lens. To talk more about this, help me welcome our colleague, Langit Rinesti.
Okay, so hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whichever time zone you are and wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining with this session 3 of Through the Climate Lens, a conference on climate storytelling in Southeast Asia. This ERG launching, the energy reporting guide launching is here because we are organized by the Climate Tracker Asia, which is part of Climate Tracker Network, an international nonprofit journalism organization that advocates for and supports amazing climate reporting. And I also would like to thank Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung for the support. So hello, my name is Langit Rinesti from Indonesia. I am the project coordinator of the Energy Reporting Guide project. And here I will be your moderator for the Q&A session. So before we start, I would like to perhaps rehash the mission of Climate Tracker Asia, that we as a team and also as an organization will always try to support journalists all over Asia in reporting better climate stories, among others through training and resources on various topics. And for this amazing opportunity, our team have collaborated with 8 journalists from Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines to develop a digital reporting guide on the topic of energy. And this digital energy reporting guide will mainly consist of a video series and then infographics and also additional energy related resources such as expert and also glossary of energy related terms. So this initiative can hopefully help, well, in particular, Southeast Asian journalists, and in general, not only Asian journalists, but also journalists all over the world who are working on synthesizing and contextualizing the complex and interrelated topics of energy and climate change in the region, in your respective countries, and also in the world. So without further ado, let's welcome our wonderful panelists today. So first of all, joining us today is our ERG writer, Robin Degel from the Philippines. Hi, Robin.
Hi, Langit. Good afternoon from Manila.
Yes, good afternoon from Indonesia as well. So Robin is also a researcher, an educator, freelance journalist, and a lecturer at Ateneo de Manila University. And later, he will introduce us more and further about the energy reporting project. And also, let's welcome the representatives of 8 contributing journalists that have become our partner in making the project come true. So first, I would like to welcome Della Shahni from Indonesia. Hi, Della. Yeah. Okay. So so Della is a freelance journalist whose works on the environmental justice, energy transition, and indigenous people have been featured in Mongabay and Project Multatuli, among others. So hello, thank you for coming, Della. And also next, Ramon. Hello, Ramon Royandoyan.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon
Nice to join you guys.
too. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. So Ramon from the Philippines, he's a business reporter with philstar.com, who has reported about the intersection of the Philippines' green recovery from the pandemic and the construction of coal plant in the country's ecological frontier. So thank you for coming. And next, last but not least, we have Tan Sulin from Malaysia. Hello, Sulin.
Hello, hi everyone. Good afternoon from Kuala Lumpur.
Good afternoon from
Of this.
from Purworejo, where I'm now. So Sulin is a journalist and the co-founder of Science Media Center Malaysia, which is an information resource center which aims to support local journalists in covering complex and or controversial science issues in the media, including what we are going to talk about today, energy. So for all the participants, whether you are a journalist or not, if you are interested in the topic, if you are interested in energy reporting and climate reporting as well, please feel free to ask us questions. Write them down in the comment section along with your name, institution, and country if you like. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to answer that directly through our panelists today. All right, so let's start the session. Perhaps I would first go to Robin. So hi, Robin.
Hi, Langit.
Yeah, so perhaps can you tell more about this project to our participants today, especially those who come from Southeast Asia?
Yes, sure thing, Langit. So I'm really glad to be at this panel discussion with, of course, Langit, our leader in this project, and our fellow journalists. As what you've been hearing in the past few minutes, I guess, essentially we developed this energy reporting guide to help journalists have a ready-made toolkit in covering the complicated but crucial topics of energy, renewable energy, and the climate, especially here in Southeast Asia, which is, as we all know, it is a fast-growing region with growing energy needs. So I guess this is a very important topic for the region. So just to tell you about the ERG, what can you expect, I guess, in the reporting guide. We collaborated with 8 wonderful journalists and media practitioners from 3 countries here in Southeast Asia. 3 of them are here in this panel, and you'll hear from them in the next few minutes. We have some video resources, video guides for you on topics such as climate and versus environmental storytelling. And my favorite, one of my favorites, I guess, are the different ways in which you can tell climate stories. We heard in the previous panel that there seems to be sometimes journalists can get in the doom and gloom of reporting climate stories. In this particular guide, we offer some tips, we offer some points on how we can perhaps introduce a human interest angle or a data journalism angle, for instance. Different ways of telling climate stories in a more compelling and in a more grounded manner. We also have infographics, which summarize key points from regarding the topics in the ERG, but also other additional topics such as security in field work, for example, energy jargons. They might some of the jargons that we use in reporting are very complicated, so we try to simplify that for you in the infographics. And we also have we're also developing a database of experts, and that's a need for us journalists in reaching out to credible sources of information who could help us make sense of renewable energy topics such as this that could help us in writing our stories as well. So I think that's just a very quick overview, Langit, of what we've been doing in the past for the past 2 months, I guess, or so in this project. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Robin, for giving us further info about this really exciting project, especially personally for me. We will get to see some of the examples of the video and also the infographics that have been produced. Really thanks to our wonderful contributors. But before we get to that, again, the starting point of creating this energy reporting guide is definitely the concern that many journalists, especially the one that is already brought from the previous section, that a lot of journalists in Southeast Asia, not only in Indonesia, Malaysia, but also in the Philippines, have encountered lots of problem when it comes to reporting about energy, especially in climate lens in each of their countries. And not only that, when we have to do that in the context of the ASEAN region in general. So I would like to go to three of our panelists here, to Dela, Ramon, and Sulin, each from different countries. So I would like to know about your perspective as a journalist. How do you feel? How do you think about the current situation regarding energy reporting in your countries, especially when it comes to climate lens? Perhaps I would like to start with Dela. Floor is yours.
Thank you everyone for having me here. In Indonesia, as you know, energy issues is covering most of in a business or economic angles. That's maybe it's also happened in another country, but yes, it happened in Indonesia. And as we know that Indonesia we just end the G20 meetings, and one of the focus on the G20 meetings is just energy transitions, which is, I think, is quite left behind covering before this. So yes, just energy transitions or another perspective of energy outside the business and economics angles, it's rare stories found in Indonesia news media. And we can see some of the story also focus on who get the benefits and who not get the benefits. So I think there are more other perspectives that's quite interesting to be covered in the future.
Okay, thank you so much, Dela. We'll come back to you to talk further about the situations in Indonesia and what you have brought from your experience and also your knowledge about climate and energy reporting in Indonesia in our energy reporting guide. Now, let's move on to Ramon. So as Dela has already told us that particularly in Indonesia, the perspective in reporting about energy is pretty, well, not really diverse in terms of the angles. Does that happen as well in the Philippines?
Yeah, I would have to agree with my colleague Della with that, especially because when you look at let's say daily reporting, you would almost always see just energy stories coming from updates from, let's say, listed companies. It would just be confined to that. Or if you try to step out of that lens, you'd mostly see the occasional reporting on energy, let's say about, like in the case of the Philippines, you look at maybe energy, like what energy power rates. You'd see that mostly confined in the news cycle, or if we're lucky, maybe like once a month, you'll see special reports talking about, well, renewable energy or its relation obviously to the climate crisis, but it's not as if you're covering it from, let's say, like a political beat where everything changes suddenly, you get daily updates. There's that, I think, stark difference with regard, I think, the other beats. So I think it's quite specialized and also quite confined within the economic and business context.
Okay, so thank you. We'll get back to you again, Ramon. I will come to Sulin to follow up with, I don't know, it seems like it's sort of like a trend in Southeast Asia that most of the energy reporting is confined within just certain angles. And what about you in Malaysia? And what are the ramifications that you have seen, not only for the journalist community in your country, but also as a national importance in general? How is it?
Yeah, for sure, definitely we do see a trend as well in Malaysia where most of the renewable energy stories, they tend to sit a lot in the economic and business section, no surprise. In fact, I do have some data to back it up. There's a research done by a fellow Malaysian, Ili Nadia, who's also a climate tracker fellow. In her research, she actually did a research over 300 stories, and more than 3/4 of the stories ran in the business, money, or economic section, and it reflected a very, what you call, a predominant business frame. And these articles as well, they include like PR content and firms and such like that. So you can see it almost leaves next to no room for environmental impacts. So I do think that we do need a more well-balanced energy story, stories that emphasize the urgency of moving away from fossil fuels towards clean renewables as energy sources. And maybe perhaps it's better also to, if energy stories are categorized as perhaps general news and not necessarily business news. In terms of topic-wise in Malaysian landscape, we can see that stories like renewable energy, like solar and wind, and perhaps a small-scale hydropower projects, they are framed quite positively as a renewable technology that could bring economic growth to rural areas while being a bit more friendly for the environment. But we see, for example, traditional hydropower dams, for example, are criticized as destructive to the local environment, and especially towards indigenous communities, and that is what is being reflected on, I would say, the Malaysian kind of reporting landscape I could share.
Let's rest there. I would like to follow up with you. So, in your opinion, especially in Malaysia, what are the main challenges of being well? Okay, I need to make sure that in your country, do you have like a certain desk that's just specialized in reporting about the environment or climate?
Yeah.
Or is it basically just general?
I would say based on over 10 years of experience being in a mainstream newsroom, such desk almost does not exist. It all depends on the reporters themselves. For example, in my case, it's my interest to report about climate change, report about environmental topics, so I take it upon myself. And then there goes the trying to pitch or convince your editor, hey, this story is important, but often not, there are some battles you have to pick, right, on what story needs to be highlighted. But also based on my observation in other major media outlet as well, it's almost non-existent. There's very few science or even environmental desks, and the reporters are probably one or two. Even that, it will be like a very senior or veteran reporter who would do it. I guess it's because also when it comes to journalists or new, I would say, early career journalists, it's like quite hard for them to grasp where to begin in terms of environmental reporting, especially in the topic of renewable energy. It can be quite intimidating, quite daunting. Like we heard before, there's talk about jargons and who do you go to speak, who do you get, how do you access a reliable sources. So these are some of the challenges I would say is being faced, especially in terms of assessing reliable sources for interviews as well. And one of the things that I observe is that usually when there's one newsroom who quoted as Professor A, for example, and then the other reporter from different newsroom will say, oh, who's that professor you just interviewed? He's very eloquent. Can you share his number? So, and then the same professor goes around and talk in different media outlets. So then you can see it's very recurring one-sided viewpoint. And then you always also see it's always usually from like the businesses or industry or government perspective. Langit.
Wow, okay, that's quite a challenge with you in Malaysia. What about you, Ramon? Are you facing the same challenges or even something even worse or perhaps not as bad? How is it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, I guess it's, maybe it's equally difficult, because I think there's always that challenge when you start off, especially with reporting about the environment, about the climate crisis, and obviously with the intersections of renewable energy. would always have to contend on how you can build context, because I think there's always that challenge for, even mid-career journalists to even figure out the story's relevance. So there's always that. And then I think an interesting point that Sulin pointed out is, I think, even with regard, what do you call that? Resource speakers. I think people who you would get as basically people to talk within your story. I think there's always they're in short supply, sadly. So there's that challenge as well. And then there's also balancing the fact that, especially with the earlier session you pointed out about gloom and doom. I think we need to sort of basically strike a balance, because I think we can either alienate readers or just altogether, saturate the whole news cycle with these gloom and doom stories. But again, I think I would emphasize the need for, obviously context with what I see in the Philippines.
Okay, so the context is really important, especially each time we're talking about energy stories. It's never simple, isn't it? There are always so many different aspects playing into the same stories. So that brought me to Dela. So I know that you are covering a lot about like this part that are not usually covered in mainstream media, talking about the impact of the people, indigenous communities in certain areas that are impacted by energy policies. So can you tell me, like, what are the challenges if because we know that is a really important angle to cover about energy stories other than business and political ones. But what are the challenges to be able to create the human stories that are impactful, that actually like punch your gut and relatable to most people?
Oh yeah, I remember the first time I put it in this energy desk. It's quite difficult for me because so many jargon, so many themes. I need to learn about what is IPP, BOOT, PPA. Oh my god! And lucky me, I have a senior that's very patient to explain to me how this energy story works. But actually, I'm also thanks to Mongabay Indonesia. It's an environmental and conservative media, online media, that give more space for our journalists to write long and in any perspective of the issues of environmental issues. And here I learned to write about that it's not just economic and business. If we talk about energy, it's about human. It's about people. People is actually the ones that affected by any energy policies. And yes, and then I learned from the NGOs friends, from the other journalists, that I could cover another angles outside the economic and business. That's once I start to go to the indigenous people, the people around the mining side, the people around the geothermal sites, and yes, found so many interesting stories that I think quite left behind, like what Ramon said before, because there is no space in their media, maybe there is no talk about it in their newsroom. So and once it's finished, I'm quite surprised with the readers' response to these stories. That, oh yeah, like for example, a geothermal story I do in one province in Indonesia, in North Sumatra. And actually, the same thing happens in another geothermal sites. And then I see more story about geothermal coverings, and I think it's quite better than before. That's fine.
Okay, wow, thank you so much. So like after we're listening to all those challenges directly from those who have been experiencing that in the field, perhaps Robin, you can shed us more light on how Energy Reporting Guide would be able to help to aid journalists all over Asia, or in particular Southeast Asia, to at least help tackle some of the main problems that have been said by Sulin, by Ramon, by Dela as well.
Yes, thank you, Langit. I think that the collaboration part with our 8 journalist collaborators is very important because we get to hear these problems, we get to hear these challenges, and along the way we tried to incorporate it. We tried to craft this guide in such a way that it could respond to the needs that Ramon, Sulin, and Della just mentioned. Especially for Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, you'd find that our guide is very contextual. We have specific situationers, energy situationers per country, provided by the 3 journalists who are here, but also very specific jargons per country, specific sources or institutions that journalists can turn to. So this is a very practical guide, I think, that could help, as Sulin mentioned a while ago, those early career journalists who are still struggling to cover the renewable energy and climate needs.
Yeah, so perhaps just to show like how this ARG might be able to help. So we have perhaps some of the video and also the infographics that we can show you. So it's more of like take a little pic, and later it will be available for all of you to download, to share in climatetracker.asia, and it will be available mainly in English, but also in Bahasa Indonesia and also in Bahasa Malaysia. Can we show the video first?
The energy beat comes with so much data. Depending on how you treat them, those data can be a valuable source of impactful story ideas. Hi everyone, my name is Made Anthony Suara from Indonesia. I used to cover climate and energy stories as a journalist for the Jakarta Post and a researcher at Infographics. In this video, I will share some insights that might help you in applying data journalism for your energy reporting. Think of data as like atoms. A single atom may not be that powerful, but if you bring them together, they can form useful elements. When individual points of data are structured, then presented in such a way that it becomes useful and relevant for a particular purpose, data becomes a strong tool for humans to gain insights about their everyday lives. Similarly, data journalism can help strengthen our reporting on renewable energy. By harnessing the power of numbers and data visualization tools, we can produce more impactful and engaging stories. How? Let me show you. There are 4 key steps in data journalism. 1. Data collection. 2. Data cleaning. 3. Data analysis. And 4. Data visualization. Now, let me walk you through each step as a journalist reporting on energy. Let's say you're writing a story about coal financing in Indonesia. First, data collection or data mining. When you collect data, imagine yourself mining for the golden data points that you need for your story. So for this story, you might start with the Indonesian Energy and Mineral Resources website to find data on Indonesia's energy mix and budget allocation. You may also want to check non-government websites too, such as the World Bank or your local think tanks. After we mine the golden data, we need to clean it. In the data cleaning phase, check if any of the data are accurate, outdated, or lack. Then we do data analysis. After you filter, clean, and refine, you need to spot and sift the possible stories you can get from your golden data. Is there any data that stands out? Or maybe there is an upward or downward trend. Are there conflicting data? In our example, you may notice from the data that Indonesia has been extremely reliant on coal. Or from reviewing data on costs, you may notice that financing green energy would cost billions of dollars, and that relying on the state's current budget won't be sufficient to cover the costs. Then, choose the best way to represent your data, just like how you would choose to use and present your gold jewelry. You might want to use a pie chart to show the proportion of coal in the energy mix in the last decades compared to other energy resources. Or you might want to use a bar graph to rank or compare budget allocations in order to seek for any increase or decrease in energy financing. You can also make an infographic summarizing the key points of your report. Remember that transforming a data set to an impactful and engaging story does not only involve finding the what, but also the why and so what. This separates a data set from the story. Make sure to interview energy stakeholders, from the decision makers to the most vulnerable who are the most impacted. Frame your story in a way that readers can grasp why the data are important to them. And don't shy away from exploring various data sources and tools too. From Flourish to R, there are just so many tools out there that you can use to convey your point. Lastly, relax and don't be scared of numbers. I know some of us can be allergic to math. I used to be one too. While a background in math or coding definitely helps, you don't need to be a numbers genius to do good data journalism. All you need is old-fashioned curiosity, thoroughness, and openness to learning new concepts and tools.
Okay, so that's just one sample. So please look forward for 7 others video with different topics. So we will have one by Sulin, we have one by Ramon, we'll have by Della, and also other journalists from Indonesia, Malaysia, and also Philippines. We'll have one from Kuka, we'll have one from Anthony, and also Dana from Indonesia. They will talk about not only the energy landscape in 3 different countries. They will, as you said, Anthony's talking about the data visualization, and also we'll be talking about energy reporting, not only in written form for print media, but how to do energy reporting in audiovisual media by Dana. We'll also have video by Ashley from Malaysia and also Imelda from the Philippines. So please look forward to that. And other than the video, it will be accompanied as well by infographics, as Robin has already told us before. Perhaps if Climate Tracker Asia team can also show us some of the sneak peek of the infographics, so we have some idea.
The energy beat.
Yes, this is one of it. So the infographics are also in different topics, and they will be completing and complementing what our fellow contributing journalists have already talked about. This one is about climate reporting and social media storytelling, and there will be others. Thank you so much. Okay, let's back to our panelists. So as we have already give some sneak peek of what to expect about this energy reporting guide, perhaps also to come to a close for our really enjoyable session today, I would ask 3 of our representations of 8 contributing journalists, in your opinion, how this energy reporting guide can help your fellow journalists in your countries and also in South Asia in general. I will start with Ramon.
Well, if you ask me, I think it's always when you, let's say, in the context of the Philippines, I think it's important to, when you jump into the energy beat, you have to look at, I guess, the problems, who's talking. And I think just getting a brief overview of the beat that you're going into, I think that's important. And I think that's one of the problems that early career reporters face. You basically don't know who you're covering, who you're going to ask, and what's sort of the direction of the coverage. And then from there, you can actually decide on what you can do. And I think that sort of advice merges through all the other, I think, countries that's covered. I think, especially with the trends that you saw earlier, with the sort of the energy reporting trends. So I think that's highly relevant for this discussion.
Okay, let's move on to Sulin. What about you? How do you think this energy reporting guide can help your fellow journalists in Malaysia?
I think it's a fantastic guide. So this energy reporting guide, I think it's a great primer for journalists, not just as a helpful starter, but also for those unfamiliar with climate reporting who wants to explore, climate change reporting. But also this also enable reporters to go have a deeper dive by connecting them with, I think, more importantly, experts, credible experts on the field. And it's my hope that this energy reporting guide will be a game changer on energy reporting in the ASEAN region.
Thank you, Celine. Amen for that. What about you, Della? How can this guide help fellow journalists in Indonesia to start covering better energy stories, especially through the climate lens?
Sulin and Ramon. And I'm to add one point, maybe now is also an collaboration era. I think it's also useful for journalists who want to do collaborating reporting and so many fellowships or grants that requires collaborations between two regions, two countries. And I think it's a good opportunity for them to learn about how the other countries scheme, how the other countries tools for energy issues. So yeah, it's cool. I hope it's. I'm thinking that how this not happens before I jump to energy issues.
Thank you, Della. Really, I personally also hope that by what we have been doing for the past 3 months through this energy reporting guide, we can help more journalists, especially the early career ones, to start like at least getting the spirit to start reporting about energy and also about climate. So perhaps for closing, I would go to Robin. What is your hope, especially because you are part of the internal team? What is your hope for this energy reporting guide and also the future of energy and also climate reporting in Southeast Asia?
Yes, thanks, Langit. When I was mulling over the question, I thought of our students here. I also work in the education sector. I'm an educator as well. And I hope that the guide will also be used by, for example, campus journalists. If campus journalists are able to cover issues such as just transition, energy, renewable energy in their own communities, if we know that grassroots journalists, local journalists, community journalists, those in the local communities are able to cover this competently and compellingly, then I think we're making an impact. So hopefully this particular guide goes out there.
Yeah, me too. Amen. Hopefully. So it will be really great if this energy reporting guide can be utilized not only by journalists, by us, but also by the students in journalism, especially because I personally also used to study journalism, and yeah, it was too bad that we didn't have this guide before. So as Ramon has already said as well, it was pretty hard to know like where to start, who to ask, where to find the information, and hopefully this guide will be able to help at least some of that. And we also understand that this guide is not perfect. We're still starting, but we really hope that you can help share this guide, not only to your fellow journalists, but also, as Robin has said, your school, your campus, fellow citizen journalists, and let us know always how can we improve this guide in the future? How can we better help you to do a better climate reporting, especially in the topic of journalism? So please look forward to this guide pretty soon. Follow our social media, Climate Tracker social media, and also please always tune in to our website, both the main website of climatetracker.org and also climatetracker.asia, where this energy reporting guide will be fully available. And also feel free to follow us here, the panelists, on social media as well. Ask us if you have any concern, if you would like to tell us about your problems and your concerns about climate reporting, and we will try to help you as much as we can. So I guess that will be all for our session today. I would really like to thank all the panelists today. Wonderful talk. I really enjoy what we have discussed. Hopefully all the participants enjoyed our discussion as well. and really hope that this energy reporting guide can be very useful for you right now and for the future.
We empower and connect environmental journalists, newsrooms, and NGOs around the world. Join our growing network, climatetracker.org.